Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad to have you here again. Today we're looking at a matter that has been heating up debates across South Africa, one that touches on immigration, law, human rights, and government policy. It's about the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit, widely known as the ZEP. Rights groups in South Africa have been calling for urgent clarity on what the government plans to do with the ZEP and the thousands of Zimbabwean nationals who are directly affected by it. Please make sure you watch until the end so you can see the sources of this news and try to verify the information for yourself. And before we go deeper, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates. The Zimbabwe Exemption Permit is not something new. It's been around for quite some time, allowing Zimbabweans who came into South Africa during times of political and economic turmoil in their country to live and work here legally. Many came in seeking better opportunities, and over the years, they've built lives here. Some have families, children who've grown up in South Africa, and roots that run deeper than a simple work contract. The ZEP was created to regulate their stay and give them a lawful way to remain in the country without falling into the trap of being undocumented. But as with most policies that involve migration, the ZEP has always been contested. Some South Africans feel the government has been too lenient, saying it places pressure on jobs, resources, and services like healthcare and education. On the other hand, human rights groups argue that it would be cruel and inhumane to simply end the ZEP and send thousands of people back to a country still struggling with economic instability and limited opportunities. Now, the tension has come to a point where rights groups are demanding urgent clarity from the government. They want to know whether the ZEP will be renewed, phased out, or replaced by another system. For many Zimbabweans living here, this uncertainty is not just a legal issue but an emotional and personal one. Imagine living your life not knowing if you'll be forced to uproot your family after years of hard work, or if your children will suddenly be told they can't continue schooling here. That's the reality facing thousands of families right now. From the perspective of rights groups, the government has been sending mixed signals. There have been announcements, deadlines, and court challenges, but no final clear decision that settles the matter once and for all. In fact, this back and forth has ended up in courtrooms, with advocacy groups arguing that mass deportations would violate human rights principles and destabilize communities. It's not only Zimbabweans who are anxious. South African employers who rely on this workforce are also uncertain about how to plan for the future. Let's not forget that South Africa itself has a constitutional obligation to uphold human dignity and fairness. The rights groups are pointing directly to this, saying that any action taken must be in line with the country's values and legal commitments. They argue that South Africa cannot afford to adopt policies that could be seen as discriminatory or harsh, especially given its history of advocating for human rights globally. At the same time, the government faces pressure from citizens who feel they're competing with foreign nationals for jobs in an already tough economy. With unemployment rates high and frustration rising, politicians are under pressure to show they are prioritizing South Africans first. This makes the ZEP a political hot potato, one that is very difficult to handle without upsetting one side or the other. Rights groups have also highlighted the contribution that Zimbabweans under the ZEP have made to South Africa. Many of them are professionals, skilled workers, teachers, nurses, and drivers who fill important gaps in the workforce. Removing them from the system suddenly would not just affect their families but would also hurt sectors of the South African economy that have come to depend on their labor. The government has at different times extended the ZEP, showing there is recognition of the complexity of the issue. But these extensions are temporary, which only prolongs the uncertainty. Rights groups say that this pattern of short-term fixes is not sustainable. What they want is a clear, transparent, and long-term plan that respects both the rights of Zimbabwean nationals and the concerns of South Africans. We should also look at the bigger picture. Migration between Zimbabwe and South Africa has been happening for decades, long before the ZEP was introduced. Families have become interconnected, and in many cases, children born to Zimbabwean parents have known no other home but South Africa. Sending them back to Zimbabwe would create a new set of humanitarian issues. The debate is not only about legality but also about identity and belonging. Some Zimbabweans under the ZEP feel more South African than Zimbabwean because of the time they've spent here. For them, the idea of being uprooted is traumatic. Rights groups stress that it's not just about papers but about people's lives, dignity, and futures. At the same time, critics argue that South Africa must enforce its laws firmly and cannot continue to extend special permits indefinitely. They argue that the system has been abused by some, leading to increased illegal immigration and strain on the border system. This is why the government is caught between two very strong opposing arguments, each with valid points. For now, the urgent demand from rights groups is simply clarity. People need to know what is going to happen so they can plan their lives accordingly. Uncertainty is the worst position to be in, and the government has the power to end that uncertainty by making a firm decision. So, will the ZEP be renewed? Will there be a completely new system to replace it? Or will thousands of Zimbabweans have to face deportation? That's the big question rights groups are putting forward. As South Africans, we must also think carefully about how we treat people who came here during desperate times. Yes, we must protect our borders and our resources, but we must also hold ourselves to the standards of humanity and fairness. Rights groups believe this balance is possible, but it requires leadership, political will, and a decision that is both compassionate and practical. Before we wrap up, let me remind you again to subscribe if you haven't yet, so you don't miss updates on important issues like this one. And let's lighten the mood just a little. This whole debate about permits and policies can get very serious, but here's a thought: if only the government could extend our data bundles the way they extend the ZEP, at least then we'd all be happy and no one would complain. And for those who love extensions, maybe we can also ask the salon ladies to weigh in, because they've been giving extensions that last longer than government ones. All images used in this video are for illustration purposes only. Sources of this news include Daily Maverick, News 24, and EWN.